Is there a person in the world that you know that has not felt stressed out at some point in their lives about anything? As human beings, it is very natural, very normal for us to feel stress. In fact, it is inevitable as it is something that we cannot control. It's just our body reacting through possible threats or situations that we are put in that stresses us out. As a college student, I feel stress about my classes, about my assignments that I have to turn in, and just about my education. And it's just something that I cannot control. Learning about stress is very helpful because it helps us understand how stress affects our body and how we can go ahead and find coping mechanisms that are healthy for us so that we don't have long-term effects because of stress. I will first discuss what stress is, and we will discuss the definition of stress and how stress affects our body, and finally, how we can get what we know about stress and find coping mechanisms so that we can deal with stress in a healthy manner. So what is stress? Stress is defined in the psychology textbook that I use for my psychology class by Deborah Litch, and it says that the stress is defined as the response to perceived threats or challenges resulting from stimuli or events that cause strain. So that is the definition. Now, these events that cause strain, or the stimuli that cause strain, are also known as stressors. And these stressors can be various things. It could be events. So if you're planning like a wedding or some type of party, that could be very stressful. It could be ideas or thoughts. So the idea of not being able to turn in your assignments on time or not being able to create a great speech delivery, that could also be very stressful. So it's these ideas or thoughts that can cause you to have this reaction. And also, it could also be people that can stress you out, whether it be your boss or your teachers, your professors. It can be a various range of things. It is also very important to note that not all stressors are bad. Not all stressors stressors do cause stress, but they're not bad. Even though they do create stress, they're not bad stressors. So that could be like planning a party. It is stressful, but at the long run, it doesn't, it's not a bad thing. Parents also experience stress when they get a newborn. It is not necessarily a bad thing. So it's very important to differentiate the different types of things that can cause you to be stressed and whether they're good or bad. And that also helps out in being able to deal with the stress. So after knowing what stress is and what stresses us out, it's very important to know what goes on in our body when we are facing these stressors in our lives. So, what is the effects of stress in our body? So when we are facing stress, when we are face to face with this stressor, our brain automatically activates the sympathetic system. And the sympathetic system is our fight or flight. We also have a parasympathetic system that is like when everything calms down. So our fight or flight system releases epinephrine and norepinephrine, and this causes our heart rate, our blood pressure to elevate, our respirations to elevate, and also increase blood flow to our muscles, and that causes that tension that you feel when you are stressed out. And so this is the reaction of our bodies to stress when you are faced to a threat. But when we deal with stress, like internal stress, that could be very chronic, and having too much of that could have a great effect on our body. And so that's when we can end up with chronic diseases such as gastric ulcers, impaired immune systems, and cardiovascular diseases. And one of the very common ones is hypertension that could also lead to stroke. So it's very important for us to know that, so that way we can use those coping mechanisms to reduce our stress, to not have to deal with these type of things. So how do we cope? Well, it's very important to know that the priority before finding the mechanism to cope is to recognize when you are stressed out. So there are all these types of symptoms of stress, and I'm pretty sure each of you know how your body reacts to stress. So you know what your symptoms are. You can recognize when you are stressed out. Some people feel tension, that's very common, irritability, frustration, not being able to concentrate, crying, difficulty, and it's just very easy to identify that. So what are the healthy coping mechanisms? So we eat healthy. That is one of the recommendations by the CDC. They recommend that we take care of ourselves first, eat healthy, getting plenty of sleep, exercising. Talking to others is a great way to let all that tension out of you, and it's very, very important to avoid drugs and alcohol, as these may be negative coping mechanisms. And it's also good to deal with the stress with these coping mechanisms, because stress can also affect your mental health. In a study done at the Journal of American College Health, they did a study and they found that 87% of college students felt overwhelmed by all they had to do in the past year, and so that had impacted their academic performance. And I could very well see that, because stress can also, like I said, it can cause you to not be able to concentrate, not be able to sleep, and that can very well impact your school performance. And I have dealt with that before, where I just give out, procrastinate, and that stresses me out, and then it's just not a good combination. So it is very, very important for us to know all these things, so that way we can deal with the stress in a healthy manner. And so we discussed the definition of stress, the effects of the stress in our bodies, and the coping mechanisms to dealing with these stress. And I hope you learned a lot with me today. Thank you for your time.